Hello children, welcome back once again in English grammar class. This is Uma Vidushi, your English teacher, and today we are going to study about voices. So without wasting much time, let's begin today's class. What we are going to learn in this video? We will learn about active voices, some examples of active voices, passive voice, examples of passive voice, reason to use active and passive voice, when to use passive voice, and then at last we will come to know how to convert active into passive voice. What is voice? Voice is the form of verb takes to indicate whether the subject of the verb performs or receives the action. There are two types of voice, active voice and passive voice. Now first of all, understand what is active voice. So active voice indicates that the subject of the verb is acting. It means that when the subject does or acts upon the verb in any sentence, the sentence are said to be in active voice. Let's take example. The police arrested the criminal. Here, the subject of the sentence is the police because the police is doing the action. And here the word arrested is in active voice because this verb clearly shows that the action is done by the subject. The judge is reading the case. Here the judge is the subject of the action, whereas reading is in active voice. He has sold the house. In this sentence, he is the subject of the sentence or subject of the action, whereas has sold is in active voice. Now, in these all examples shows that the subject is doing the verb's action. The dog jumped onto the boy. Here the subject is the dog who is doing the action of jumping. So jumping is verb. Christy will give a book report to the class. So Christy is subject in this sentence who is doing the work of giving. So this is how we can identify that the sentence is in active voice. Now let's come to know what is passive voice. In a passive voice sentence, the subject and object flip-flop. It means that the subject becomes the passive recipient of the action. Because the subject is being acted upon, or in passive, sentences are said to be in the passive voice. Let's understand this by examples. The criminal was arrested by the police. Now here the criminal is receiving the action. So this is the subject who is receiving the action, and was arrested is the verb in passive voice. The case is being read by the judge. Here the receiver of the action is the case, and is being read is are in passive voice. The house has been sold by him. Here receiver of the action is the house, and has been sold is in passive voice. So I hope students you have understood very well. Sentence is said to be in active voice and when they are said to be in passive voice. So we understood from these examples that these examples shows the subject being acted upon the verb. Like understand with two more examples. The boy was jumped on by the dog. Here the subject is boy who was being jumped on. So was being jumped on is the action, verb of the subject, sentence. The book report will be given by Christy to the class. Here, a book report is the subject that will be given. So, will be given is the verb of the sentence. This is how we can identify the sentence in active voice or in passive voice. Now, let's understand what is the reason to use active voice. The most writers prefer to use active voice because it is more direct. Like compare it. The waiter dropped the tray of food. This sentence is in active voice. But if you change the sentence in passive voice or convert the sentence in passive voice, you would say the tray of food was dropped by the waiter. So you can easily see here that how it's easy to make sentence or to frame sentences in active voice because it's more direct. The active voice is less awkward and clearly states relationship between subject and action. Let's compare it. Passive voice sentence. Your request for funding has been denied by the review committee. Now change it into active voice. The review committee denied your request for funding. So as you compare in these two sentences, the active sentences are quite easy to speak and it don't create any awkwardness, or it clearly states the relationship between the subject, who is the subject, and what the action is performed by the subject. So it's quite very easy to use active voice sentences. Now when do we use passive voice? In general, the passive voice is less direct, less forceful and less concise than the active voice, as we have seen in the previous examples also. Use the passive voice in the following situation. Use passive voice when you do not know or do not want to reveal the performer of the action. So this is when we use passive voice, when you don't want to know or you don't want to reveal the subject of the action. Passive voice sentences or verb in passive voice is also used when you want to emphasize the receiver of the action rather than the doer of the action. So in that case also we use passive voice. Let's take example. Awkward passive. My bicycle was repainted by John. Now deliberate passive. My bicycle was repainted. Here in these examples, especially in the second example, you can see that the performer is not mentioned and emphasis is on the bicycle rather than the subject. So this is why we use passive voice sentences. So I hope students you have understood very well about voices, kinds of voices, when do we use active and passive voice. Now let's see the last example to differentiate easily between active and passive voice. Pictures and fingerprints are being taken. The people have been selected. These both the examples are of passive voice. So I hope you have enjoyed this session and learned many things about voices, active voice and passive voice. In the next video, I will explain you that how to convert active sentences into passive sentences. So till then, take care. Bye bye. Thank you so much.